listening to Radio Owlsnest. The songs of Martin Page, all day, all night, forever. So grab a cup of tea, settle down with us in the Owl's Nest. Well, we did a special with Diane Poncher, my manager, not too long ago, and it was such a success. The Queen called in, Bootsy was thrilled with it, all my neighbours were very, very happy. We're going to do another one, so we're just waiting for her to... And there she is, perfectly on time, the old doorbell. Diane Poncher, welcome back to Radio Owlsnest again.
It's good to be back.
We had so much fun the first time, I think, didn't we?
Yes.
I mean, I did. Did you?
I did too.
I mean, we had so much to talk about that when we reached like 3 hours, we thought we've got to do another show. So,
I know.
You're back, and... it's really nice. I'm going to sound very professional, but it's really a joy to have you here in the studio with me.
It's a joy to be here.
I hope all of you...
And to reminisce.
There you go. I hope all of you out there have heard the first special, because we're not going to go back over that again. So if you want to find out what we talked about, you're going to have to go back to listen to the first special with Diane Poncher. We got to a point in my career, I believe, Diane, if I can remember right, when I was working with Earth, Wind and Fire, and you got me with Maurice White.
Yes.
You're not going to say so much this show, are you? I'm going to have to work bloody hard on this. But that was a very, very, very special time, wasn't it?
It was very special. You were working with Maurice in the studio, and excuse me.
She's got allergies. It's not cocaine. Yeah. It's not cocaine.
Yeah. Anyway, Maurice and Earth, Wind and Fire, they never let anybody, I mean, they were known not to let anybody in the studio when they were working in there.
Yeah, that's right.
And you and Brian were allowed in there in the inner circle, you know, the doors closed with us out. So,
I remember when I said to you that Brian and I were going to be in the studio recording that song Magnetic, and another song I wrote with John Lend, who Diane put me with, a song called Touch. Yeah. That we thought that was normal, and you said it's not normal.
Yes, it was a very, very unusual thing. You know, all the time I worked there, I didn't know anybody who got to go in there.
And I remember that when we were in there with them, Diane was right. It was like the doors were shut down and we felt like we were in a special place. And another thing I remember that, and I think Diane warned me, is that Earth, Wind and Fire were on a different time zone to the most of us, weren't they?
Yeah. Well, Maurice, at least, he was known for being late. Worse than me. He was. He would actually set his watch ahead, back, so that he thought it was later than it actually was, to help him get there not as late as he would have otherwise.
And as Diane pointed out, you know, Brian and I were like perfectionists with being disciplined and being on time and everything. And we used to arrive when they said, you know, studio time, we're starting at 11 a.m. We'd get there at 11, and I swear to God, none of Earth, Wind and Fire walked into...
There was no way Maurice was going to be there before noon.
5 o'clock, you know, I mean, in the afternoon. And we'd say we'd been here from 11. They just look at us like we were crazy. They would always say a good time, 11. But that meant 5 or 6.
Yeah, not to you. You had your ties on and your briefcases.
Very disciplined. That's right. Well, actually, that's true. When we first came around, we brought our briefcases with cassettes, but we learnt pretty soon that musicians don't really respond to businessmen walking in with a suitcase and playing cassettes. I think Diane said, "You look too much like accountants. Stop this." Yeah. We had Fairweather Page on our backs, you know, and we were very much into trying to impress people. But it was such a learning process with Earth, Wind and Fire. And I remember coming back to Diane's house because that's where Brian and I were staying. And this is when our career was just beginning really to erupt. I'd had We Built This City in the charts, and things were, and These Dreams, 2 number ones. And here I was with Earth, Wind and Fire, and they were cutting Magnetic, my first song. All right?
Your first song on your own.
Another thing, tell me about the publishing things that used to happen with Earth, Wind and Fire, because we were worried, right?
Well, it was a sort of a normal thing at the time when a very, very successful artist would take your song. And in Maurice's case, he was one of those people. He would take usually like half the publishing. If he cut the song, the writer, the idea was, would be grateful enough to have his or her song cut by an artist that was guaranteed pretty much to sell and make money for that writer. So he would take half the publishing. That was the privilege of getting your song cut by a successful band. And Maurice did this practice quite regularly. But in Martin's case...
he didn't do it.
He didn't. We didn't even have to ask him not to. He just didn't automatically do it with you for some reason. I think maybe it had something to do with his sort of attachment to you. He seemed to sort of take you under his wing, didn't he?
Yeah, well, he did, actually. We did connect very deeply, and over the work I did with him after that Electric Universe album, he took me with him to do Barbra Streisand and Neil Diamond, and I did his solo record with Brian. And he took me and Brian on as associate producers on a solo record, which was fantastic. And Diane was always making me aware that Maurice was a gentleman, and that the respect he was showing me and Brian wasn't always what other writers would get. So we felt like we were in the inner circle there.
Very much so.
But that was an incredible period for me, and I still talk about Maurice being such an influence. To me, it's a whole podcast talking about how he affected me. At the same time, I was working with Bernie Taupin and Maurice White. I was getting the best education I could. Just talking there, though, Diane, about you knew so much about publishing that me and Brian and myself didn't know. That we'd sit in a car and Diane would have to draw a cake. And a pie, and show us. I'm still having difficulty with this. How all publishing royalties were being divided, and what it meant to be, mechanical royalties and performance royalties. And I'm still dicey.
Publishing and writers.
I'm dicey on it now. But can you remember what you were teaching us? We just looked at you like, yeah, all right. Yeah.
Well, it was important that you understood what you were, what the deal was, or, so, and me being a very detail-oriented, I would just do it in a pie because it was very illustrative.
All it did was make us hungry. We said, let's go to Big Bob's.
You just draw a pie, and you draw and shade it in, and draw how it's... with little lines to what it just made more sense.
And for the writers that are out there, Di, I just tell them what they should basically expect as a writer with royalties, if you can. Well,
I mean, if you mean how it works, I mean
how it works. That's really what I mean. Yeah.
If you picture the whole song, do it like a pie, draw a circle and put a line through it. And one half is the publisher's share, and the other half is the writer's share. And so there's two ways of looking at it. You can look at it like they tend to do in England. It's 100%. And if you have a 60-40 deal, that's 60-40 of 100, out of the 100%. Here, it's sort of how much they do it by the publisher's share, or so... 50% of the publisher's share is really a quarter of the pie.
Right.
So it can be confusing. That's why I used to draw those circles. But over here in the U.S., at least, it's people tend to think of it more in terms of...
Now, the English deal we had, I think it was 60-40.
It was 60-40.
And
not good.
Not good. And a good deal would have been early on 70-30 or 80-20, right?
75-25 would have been great, but for at least 70-30, I would have thought, But 60-40 that's what I meant in the first thing we did when I said your deal was very favorable to the publisher, and whenever there was a question, it was always more towards their favor.
So I knew, and Brian did as well, that when we met with Diane, we thought this really is the ingredient we need so that we can relax on writing our songs and trust in somebody. And of course, management, it's really important if you have a great friendship and trust. And we did a trial period, and I think songwriters should know this, that a manager doesn't have to instantly sign you to a form. If the manager really wants to work with you, they'll prove themselves without signing at first that you can all work together. And that's really what happened with us.
Yeah, well, we've certainly worked that way.
Yeah.
Some people will do like a little contingency thing.
Yeah.
They'll do maybe like a 6-month period and
Yeah.
whatever. I don't know how they do it now.
No. That was another
then.
great thing with ASCAP. And in England you have PRS, but here you have BMI and ASCAP, which are the performing rights societies. And Diane was very, very instrumental in getting us to ASCAP and getting our business in order.
Well, and I was learning a lot then, too. I mean, I remember sitting in Todd Brabeck's office at ASCAP. And because ASCAP they don't do it this way anymore, but they had a very strange way of figuring out your royalties where it would get spread out over the year in like 4 different payment periods instead of in all at once in the period in which you earned it.
Now, Todd Brabeck, who was he?
He was like the I don't remember his title, but he was the head of
A knowledgeable boy.
ASCAP. Yeah, he was the head guy.
Yeah.
In the LA office, and he knew all about, of course, how it all worked. So he would explain to me how to anticipate what your next royalty was going to be based on a number of factors. And at the time, I made sense out of it. But I remember I really had to concentrate every time I wanted to figure something like that out. Like I was learning all over again.
Yeah, but you were like that with contracts as well. And while Brian and myself glazed over looking at you, and you would always be aware of what our songs were doing. I mean, the times that we lived off of our royalties, and it was pretty magical that every quarter, you'd see rewards for what you'd done. I mean, it's not that way now so much, but we were in the prime time when music and radio was really powerful. Yeah,
the airplay.
Yeah, and I felt very confident with Diane because I knew even if the royalties didn't arrive on time, or she would query, and she took. Another thing I got to say here is that every song we wrote, Brian, and instrumentally myself, Diane took details of and instantly got them copywritten.
I got them copied. Well, that was part of the deal with whoever the publisher was. Yeah. They didn't always do it, but. I knew this guy through my father named Dave Pell, who I think he taught at Dick Grove School of Music as well. But he was a friend of mine.
And he helped a great deal, right?
He did. I mean, I remember being at his office, and he was saying, if you're going to do publishing, you need to know this, and when something gets put on hold, you want to make a note of this. This is what you have to keep track of. And so based on that, and he was extremely helpful, I sort of devised a system for you, which turned out to be very helpful, especially later on, not that long ago.
I got to jump in here. I've been with Diane for over 40 years, and we've just been able to renegotiate all our copyrights from our career into a very favourable place. And I just recently read a book by Chris Difford with Squeeze, and I was amazed that all through his career, all those years, at the end of even now, at the end of his career, they don't own much of their own copyrights at all. And Diane was able to take all our songs, and my songs in particular, through these 40 years, label them, get control of them, and we just really renegotiated a fantastic situation for me at the end of my career, which is a songwriter's a dream, really.
Yeah.
You want to get your songs
back. Your copyrights are really important. But anyway, it was very important to me to keep track of everything, so I had a system for it. Because there was this clause in your contract with Zomba, which was very specific, that if they hadn't cut a song from the time you submitted it, so I had to keep that date.
That's my first publisher, anyway.
Yes, in England. If within 2 years after submitting the song, they hadn't got a cut with a major, then you had 28 days to notify them that you wanted your song back.
28!
So I kept track of those 28 days. First of all, the date that we submitted the song, and then I'd put a calendar for 2 years later if we hadn't gotten a cut. Yeah. I would send them a notice, which the lawyers helped me create, and I just used the same template for each different song.
And still today at Diane's house and her office there, it's just tons and tons of folders with my songs written on them. So how grateful can you be? I am very grateful, Diane.
No, it worked out well because one by one, we got a ton of songs back, reverted back to you before we even got to this getting our copyrights back, Tom.
Yeah, you know, it brings up a really a memory that I have from those early years that we worked together. On the last show, we mentioned that I worked with Ray Parker. The first thing that I did was Ghostbusters, and it was such a success, and I got on so well with Ray that we got a call. Well, actually, I submitted another song to Ray for his band Ray Radio, and it was a song called "Love Is the Drug," and it was just a really great track. I think I've played it on a previous show, and Ray loved the song, and then his management got involved, and I thought, well, you know, I'm glad he loves the song, but then his manager, after the success of Ghostbusters, he called you, didn't he, Diane?
He did. His name was Joe Ruffalo of Cavallo, Ruffalo, and Farnoli. And he wanted Ray's name on there. I don't think he spoke to Ray about this.
Yeah, I don't think Ray knew about this.
Yeah. But he wanted Ray to be the writer, or as a writer, and to get part of the song. And I said, no. And this is a song you wrote on your own. Yes. I don't even think you wrote it with Brian.
Yes, that's right. It's a song I totally wrote on my own.
So, you know, that was really important to us because it was early on when you didn't have that many on your own.
And this was going to be for another film. And I think they said that Ray hasn't got time to write the song.
Yes. So, but he wanted Ray to cut the song, or Ray wanted to cut it. Anyway, I had to argue with Joe over this, and I wasn't going to budge on that, although I did, after talking to you, say, you know, if you want a piece of the publishing, or if you want a cut, but we don't want to put Ray's name on it because everybody will think, because Ray had the fame, that Ray wrote it, and you were just the writer who, you know, got your name on it. And he didn't want that. He wanted Ray to be the writer.
And as you said, I don't think Ray was at all aware of this situation.
I don't think so either. I really can't imagine.
But back in those days, you know, even I was thinking, oh God, you know, I've just got Earth, Wind and Fire, etc. Wouldn't it be great to be with Ray Parker? It was all about credits for writers. It's all about credits, and I was very tempted for a while because it would be written by Ray Parker and Martin Page, and then I thought to myself, it's just not bloody fair.
It wasn't fair, and that was our big thing all along, is we wanted what was fair, we wanted what we deserved, never more, you know, if it was fair. And if it was unfair to us, we were going to stand our ground.
And I thought about that for other songwriters. I thought if I, you know, so I was beginning to speak to other writers and go to ASCAP and get asked to speak to them, I thought you've got to fight for these rights because it's integrity of what you do. And if you get crushed the first time, you could easily be crushed the second, third and fourth time.
And, I mean, there are more ways of looking at it than what's presented to you, like offering him, you know, something that Ray would be able to earn money from, and therefore Joe would earn money off of Ray from it. But that wasn't the thing. He wanted Ray's name on it. So there was really no negotiation.
You know, I do think that in LA, you know, pretty early on, Diane made me aware of it can be this way. You know, with Earth, Wind and Fire, I might have had to have sacrificed something with publishing with Maurice. It didn't happen. He was very honourable. But instantly with Ray Parker, that started to occur. And we started to hear this happening more. And in fact, we'll probably talk about a bit more of that later on because it happened. But I think it's a great time to play the demo of Love Is a Drug. In fact, I went across to see Ray Parker not too recently.
He still got it.
And the first thing he said to me, because I wanted him to play on my new record, he said, "Hey, Love Is a Drug," and he pulled it out, a cassette. He said, "I still love that song," you know. And I thought, wow, he still got the cassette, you know. But anyway, I think it's the perfect time to play the actual 8-track demo of Love Is the Drug.
It's so space, lost without trace. Ooh, the feeling never stops. I'm starting to shake, but there's nothing I can take to make me forget about you. I'm dead on my feet, my heart skips a beat. There's nothing any doctor can do. My body says love is the drug. You're in my blood. Love is the drug, can't escape it. I need it. Love is the drug. I'm thinking of love is the drug, can't refuse it. I use it. Love is the drug, I can't beat it. You're in my blood. Love is the drug, can't escape. Can we make a deal, baby? Love is the drug, I can't beat it. I'm thinking of love is the drug, can't refuse it. I use it. Starting to shiver, my heart's cold as ever. The fear, it's beginning to show. I've taken the kicks, now I'm needing a fix. Wish I'd never let you go. It tears me inside, it cuts like a knife every time you say, baby, we're through. I'm looking for help, cause I can't help myself. You know that I'm an addict for you. My body says love is the drug. You're in my blood. Love is the drug, can't escape it. I need it. Love is the drug. I'm thinking of love is the drug, can't refuse it. I use it. Love is the drug, I can't beat it. You're in my blood. Love is the drug. Can we make a deal, baby? Love is the drug, I can't beat it. I'm thinking of love is the drug, can't refuse it. I use it. Can't you see it's cold turkey, baby? I'm just about to lose my mind. Give it to me, give me what I need. Oh, inject me with your love, let's get high. Love is the drug. You're in my blood. Love is the drug, can't escape it. I need it. Love is the drug. I'm thinking of love is the drug, can't refuse. Can we make a deal, baby? Love is the drug, I can't beat it. You're in my blood. Love is the drug, can't escape. Can we make a deal, baby?
That was fun to listen to, wasn't it?
Yeah. Good demo.
I was singing it very different in those days. Very tight trousers, and of course, I thought it was going to be on a radio record because Ray was going to put together radio again. It didn't happen, but it was nice to hear that demo. It's amazing when you. I think that's another thing for songwriters. You lose songs over a period of time.
Yeah.
Diane obviously used to keep all records of my songs when I wrote them. I had to give her a lyric sheet.
Yeah.
I had to give her the chords. She had to have every details of it. Thank God she did that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
They're still
all
filed.
about, it's all about keeping records. Even now, if I call Diane and say, hey, you know, I'm playing an old song I wrote with Bernie Taupin, Slumber City or something. I say, have you got the chords? And she says, of course I've got the chords. Yes, and Diane faxes
A
the
few
chords.
things slipped through the cracks that I
Yeah.
didn't, but most
Well,
of them I did.
We were pretty prolific through that period. Around this time as well, I want to get Diane's feedback on this. I had a major collaboration come in front of me. I'd had the hits. I was working with Bernie, working with Earth, Wind and Fire, and Gary Gersh at Geffen Records said, I'd like you to write with Robbie Robertson. I remember saying, like I did in those days, like, yes, of course. And I didn't really know too much about Robbie Robertson. And I had to call Diane and say, who is Robbie Robertson and what does it mean? Is it worth it?
Yeah, and you said to me, should I be wearing cowboy boots?
I thought it was... Well, I remember the band in England. They had a hit called Rag Mumba Rag. And I remember when I was living in the South with my dad at the air bases, I heard The Night They Drove Old Dixie down by Joan Baez. And I remember buying the record and going, Robbie Robertson wrote that. But I wasn't really a fan of the band.
Yeah.
Because I thought they were, I was a pop boy, and I just thought they were a little bit like Rag Mumma Rag, a little bit ragged.
Yeah, no, I told you, I think you already knew they were Bob Dylan's band, but I told you about Big Pink. That was like the big thing when that was my era, and that was just a huge album. Everybody had to have that album. So
Diane took me down to Tower Records and said, you need to buy Big Pink, this, that and that. And I did a quick course. I usually knew everything about everybody I worked with, but I didn't really know too much about Robbie. I did a quick homework, and Diane put me straight with it, and I got a deeper appreciation. And in that period, I wrote Fallen Angel and Hell's Half Acre on his first solo record. Gary Gersh had wanted me to modernise Robbie somewhat, but actually Robbie was very his own man, and in a lot of ways I bent to his rules. And Fallen Angel, I think, was one of the most emotional things I've written. I think when I played the demo to you of Fallen Angel, it wasn't called Fallen Angel, it was called War of Angels, but I remember Diane saying this is pretty special.
Yeah.
Can you remember anything about the era that I was working with Robbie Robertson? I know I was knackered coming home from the village, remember?
Well, it went on and on and on.
That's
I
right.
do remember that. And you'd bring Robbie ideas, and he was a real thinker.
Yeah.
He not so much talking. He thought a lot.
Yes.
I didn't really.
That's right.
I never saw him very much. I think I saw him once or twice when you were working with him.
That's right. That's right. He was at the
He seemed to be always in that room. He was always.
Yes, he had a special room at the top of the village, and we were down below one day working with Paul Young, and I said, well, Robbie's probably upstairs, and Robbie came down and took a photograph with us all, and I think that's when you first met him.
That's right. Yes, I remember that. He was a real heartthrob, But I do remember that, and I do remember there were long days, and every time you came back with ideas, there was more to do,
Fallen Angel took over a year.
Yeah.
There's the phone, and it says on the phone, spam risk. And spam, Monty Python. But it makes me think like, spam risk. That means you may eat some spam. It's a risk that you may go down to the shop and say, I need spam. It's a spam risk. Anyway, I don't know why I went there. Spam. Back to the Robbie Robertson solo album. And yes, I remember driving back to Diane's house and saying, this goes on for bloody ever. Because Robbie has, as Diane said, I would play him ideas and he'd go, yes, Man
of few words.
Yeah, he went, I think you're on to something there.
But, I think I think deep down you knew you were learning something from all of that, really.
Well, I've said it before, Diane, and and actually, I think you made me very aware that this was a very important collaboration, and I had Bernie, Maurice White, and Robbie Robertson, and for all different reasons, I saw them as the pyramid of a great education.
Yeah.
I learned a lot with Robbie because he would take a lot, as we said, a lot of time on really trying to eke out emotions.
Yeah.
And I think I used to always bring back roughs. That was my thing. I'd say, can you, after we worked on a song, I would say, can I take a rough away, please, Robbie? And then I'd go back to Diane and play it to her and to see how she felt about it. But that was a great period with Robbie, wasn't it?
That was a great period. A very distinctive period, really. It was almost exclusively Robbie during that. Yeah,
you've brought back another memory. I remember that I was working with so many people, though, that once I turned up to Robbie and he said, "Can you come tomorrow?" And I said, "No, I'm working with Maurice White." And he go, "What is Earth, Wind and Fire more important than me?" And I go, "Well, I suppose it is." And so there was a lot going on. But Robbie was, as you can see when he talks and does documentaries, you get a sense there's a real earth, caring and deepness about his music, which I think helped me a great deal because I'd come through the pop world and suddenly I was with Peter Gabriel and Daniel Lanois and musicians from New Orleans, and it meant something to me because I didn't want to just be, and I don't mean this derogatory, but I didn't want to be thought of as a corporate songwriter that was just doing pop songs all the time. I wanted to learn more. And I think that you couldn't learn better than being on an album that took, 3 years of real intense work.
Yeah, you really had to dig deep.
Digging deep, writing songs for movies at that time. I do know that that became quite important, didn't it? It was like a part of that era in the late 80s and 90s. You're right.
Yeah, it became a big thing, and all the movies seemed to always make room for popular songs to be in it.
I mean, Dancing in Heaven, we got into Girls Just Want to Have Fun.
Yeah.
And of course, Brian and myself and Q-Phil, we thought, well, that's amazing. Your songs can be in movies. But then after the success we were getting, I remember that you were calling me a lot and saying, they're going to pay you to write a song, right, for a film.
Right, they'd pay you just to write the song for the film.
Can you imagine?
if they took it, then there was a fee,
Yeah.
of which the initial amount was a part of. But if they didn't take it, you got this like consolation fee for having done it.
To me, it was like you can't lose. You know,
Yeah.
it's like if we write a lot of crap, they're still going to pay us. But of course, I took these film songs really serious, and I would say to Diane, because they'd have deadlines, I'd say, "You've got to give me 3 weeks to write this," and Diane would, make all these excuses up for me. That's what's great about having a manager. I've got to say now is because you don't really want to argue with anybody. You don't want to argue with the songwriters. You don't want to talk about
Manager can be the bitch.
that. Absolutely. So Diane would say, you've got a call to write for this film, and I'd say, great, but give me 3 weeks. And actually, what comes to mind here is a film. It sticks in my mind that we wrote a song for a movie called Say Anything. Remember that?
Yeah.
And it was quite a successful film. It was the one where you had the boombox being held up to the window, and Peter Gabriel's "In Your Eyes" was being played. Well, I wrote a song for that with John Bettis. And I don't know how I got with John Bettis. Can you remember? John Bettis was the lyricist who worked with the Carpenters.
Yeah, I actually don't remember how that happened, but I think it was through the publisher.
Yeah, and so he had a good reputation, and so he came across to my house, and I wrote a song called "All for Love." Now, I'd actually sang "All for Love" in the demo, and I think John Bettis was like, "Yeah, that's normal," but we couldn't find out anything else to write, so he kept the title, and then he wrote some really gorgeous words with it. Tommy Thunderberg, remember him?
Yeah.
Great session singer. He came across to my house, and we did a demo for it, and actually, it brings back memories. Diane, just speak a little bit about what it was like when you were dealing with movie companies.
Well, I remember with this particular one, Nancy Wilson, I think it was.
That's right,
from Heart.
The singer from Heart. You sang These Dreams, yeah.
Yeah. Was going to do the song, and apparently, well, I got a call from Trudy Green, her manager, saying that she added some words or changed some words around while she was working up the song.
That's right. Wow.
And Trudy thought that she should be added as a writer. And so, of course, I checked with you. I mean, it was ridiculous, but I checked with you, and do you remember?
I do. I remember going like, no bloody way. I mean, they were in the studio cutting it.
Yeah.
And then, Diane told me that, and I mean, I know what Diane felt, but I said, no, you can't do that. The song's already finished. We've already done demos of it. They're in the studio. I mean,
we're back to this thing about fair. It's just not fair.
And again, this begins to appear more and more that, at the last minute they're going to try and get something on the writers and hopefully they'll think that you're weak enough to want the cut. Like, we may not cut this song unless you agree. Now, I knew they were in the studio, and actually Diane spoke back to Trudy and said no, and I think she left a message on her phone, and Trudy Green called me, and I remember getting a message and standing.
And that's really not cool.
And I remember hearing her voice on the answer phone and saying, I'm not going to answer this because I know Diane's already answered. And then I think it was confirmed to Diane that they agreed. And actually, when I heard the record, there was no change on the record. There was no other lyrics there. Yeah. But they do threaten you. They say, they
would hold things like that over your head.
Yeah, you may not get the cut if this goes. I think this again. We've got the demo here that we did that I wrote with John Bettis. Should we play it, Diane?
Yeah, let's do that.
That sounded quite professional, didn't it? Shall we do it? Oh, of course we will. This was done on a 16 track, and it was done in this house, but I just bought the house, so my board and my tape machine were in the living room. It was one of the first things I ever did in this house. Tommy Thunderberg sings on the demo. He sang it, and then he wasn't happy with it, and so he said, I want to sing it again. John Bettis came to the house and heard the song while Tommy was doing the second vocal on it, and I remember taking this into the record company and playing it to them, and I remember the feeling when they heard it was like, I'm not sure. And of course, I think I did a song and dance and jumped up and down and pointed at how great it was. And eventually, at the end of the meeting, they thought, well, it's John Bettis. He's the lyricist for the Carpenters. And Martin Page is quite well known. And somehow, we walked it through. And it actually, didn't it, Diane? It became a single.
It did, yeah.
And I think there's a video of it on YouTube, and I think Nancy Wilson sang it well. I'm trying to remember all this. Richie Zito.
That's right, Richie.
Richie, who we'd met many years. He started to seem to be producing a lot of my songs. Anyway, I'm rambling. Diane, I want you to introduce this song, please.
All for Love, the demo.
At what I see in your eyes, there's someone come to carry me. Some never have the chance, some throw the chance away. Now it's in our hands, we face it unafraid. Was right. We gave it all for love, saved it all for love. Didn't we touch the sky above and make the music out of madness? We gave it all. Hear each other and never turn away. To my starving heart, you are my home. We gave it all for love, saved it all for love. Didn't we touch the sky?
Yeah, that again brought back memories, and it's, you know, hearing these old demos again, you suddenly, sometimes you think I could have done better, and then other times you go like, that sounds really, really bloody good. They should have jumped up and down about it. But that was in the film Say Anything. It reminds me, Diane, that we did have a lot of trauma sometimes with getting cuts. It's not that easy. It just doesn't fall into your lap, does it? Sometimes.
No, not sometimes. And when it does, there's often arguments and an uphill battle about the deal.
Again, it's good to have a manager because you can just say, I'm not going to cause the problems. It's your job.
No, you want the artist or the writer to be the good guy all the time. You don't want him to have any any kind of nasty.
I did put you under a lot of pressure, though, I believe. Right back, I'm going to drop right back to when I first came to LA. People wanted us to produce because Brian and myself had done Dancing in Heaven and Q-Phil, and there was a band called Bone Symphony, which were about to break, and Capitol said, we want you to do an EP with them, which is right, but it's a mini album. And they were quite a good band, weren't they, Diane?
Oh, they were an excellent band. I really liked them.
A three-piece, yeah. And we did. So we said, yes, this will be good for us to produce. We went in the studio. We produced them on about 4 or 5 tracks. It's on YouTube. I'm proud of it. And in England, they gave it like this. They reviewed it as saying this is the best band to come from America, and quite a time. But they couldn't break it here in America. But when we finished this wonderful EP, Diane was speaking to Capitol Records. I think it was Tom Trumbo, if my memory's good. He was an A&R man.
Yeah.
And they were trying to change the deal on us.
Yeah, all of a sudden out of the blue. So Martin was, of course, infuriated and just sort of at the end of the session one day took the tapes under his arm, the masters, and walked out of the studio with the tapes and took them home.
I can't believe I did that. I remember,
nobody does that.
Nobody does. And I remember I was so infuriated that we weren't being treated fairly. And I remember talking to the second engineer and saying, look, I don't want to get anybody into trouble. It was always good to make friends with the second engineer. And I said, but you can leave the door open where you put the tapes, and I'm going to take them. And he was like, well, I didn't hear that, but the door will stay open. And I took the tapes back to my house. I remember Brian going, are you sure you want to do this, Pagey?
It was war. Those tapes were not going to be revealed or found until we got our deal, which we had already agreed on the deal, and they were just trying to renege.
So basically, I stole the tapes and said you can't have them until the deal is what we agreed to do, and it's fair. And I think even Diane had to speak to lawyers, and even Bob Cavallo.
Bob was even amazed. He said, "Oh my God, that's balls."
But he did say it. I think he was quite into it in a way, wasn't he?
I think secretly he was quite amused and happy that Martin, the artist, had the balls to do that. He didn't have to order it or say anything.
No, but I remember you spoke to our lawyer, and our lawyer was like, dangerous, but it's okay. We'll work it out.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we got told by Capitol Records, like we don't, the police would come round, and then
there's always accompanied. These things are always accompanied with threats of various, imaginations.
And I just said, no, it wasn't me, it was Brian, the Scotsman, and he lives here. I just pointed at everybody else. But it got to that point where they were saying, if you do not give us the tapes back, you've got to face this. And then when they realised that we wouldn't give the tapes back and that we could make a point of it, they agreed. Even though I was being a thief, they agreed that it was a fair thing to do, right?
They came to their senses, and they eventually honored the deal, and the tapes were returned, and all went well.
I remember that a man coming to the door, me opening the door and saying, here are the 24-track tapes, and he just got in a taxi and drove away. And I thought, I'm not going to prison. I'm not going to prison. But that's what you had to face with. But also, if I was on my own and I didn't have Diane and her link to Bob Cavallo and her link to a good attorney, we would have been crushed.
Yes. Absolutely. That can happen.
Yeah. So Bone Symphony was a bit of a battle to get that record out, but that brought back memories. But those days were great because our stock was going up, and I seemed to be working absolutely non-stop. And of course, you're also faced with going back to your old country because I wanted to stay in LA and I just wanted to keep on working. And so I asked Diane, what should I do? Because I think I was on a worker's permit, wasn't
H1.
H1.
Yeah.
And so I had to get a green card.
You had to get a green card. Well, that was a whole process starting with the H1, because I remember when you first came here, you came as a regular visitor, visa-wise, and the first thing that happened through the Cavallo Ruffalo and Farnoli office was Valerie Carter, who Bob managed, wanted to do some demos.
And she was a great singer that sang with James Taylor and numerous great West Coast artists,
And she had an album from before that, too, that was out with a small group. And Bob thought it would be a good idea for her to record some of your demos for her demos that would be used to get her a record deal.
Yeah.
And that we thought was great for you, too, because you'd have Valerie singing these demos for you that you could use to get cuts on the songs.
Yeah.
So the problem we had was that you didn't have a work visa, so it would have been illegal for you to do work and to get paid for it.
Yeah.
And you needed to get paid, and we really wanted to do it. So eventually I came up with this idea and said to Bob, if you pay for Martin's legal fees for the immigration attorney to get the H-1 work visa, we can use you as the sponsor to get that, through. You can pay him as a legal expense. That way you can write it off as a legal expense. Martin would have had to use that money for that purpose anyway, so it's like paying him without it being illegal.
Great plan. Yeah.
And everybody was happy.
And didn't we have to? Didn't Bernie Taupin get involved in helping us?
Yes,
with the green card?
eventually. So that we had 3 H-1 visas. I think that 3 was the maximum over the years.
Oh, that's
One
right.
was about a year too long.
You had to be so aware of that you're running out of time. Yeah.
And we used the same guy, Ralph Aaron Price, to get the immigration attorney. So he knew us. Anyway, by the time it was time to get your green card, you were working. This is when you were heavily working with Bernie.
Yeah.
And Bernie had a company called Rouge Booze, and the people, his accounting people that were running all the business, all the money part. And so we worked with them.
I had to work for him, right? Is that right?
Yeah, you didn't really actually work for him, but we set it up so that they were sort of a pseudo-employer of yours, but the contracts looked like they employed your services. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so the money went to them, and it was great that Bernie was so trusting.
Yes, thank you, Bernie.
Because we had to really, do things where they really, had to trust you. In a lot of ways. Not that they weren't protected, but still, it was a leap of faith.
Yeah.
And so they would get paid, and so did we, because anything you got paid for would have to be paid to Rouge Booze.
I'm already baffled, already.
On behalf of you, right? And then Rouge Booze would pay it to you. So that you still got it, but it was a roundabout way. So that, and that helped you get your green card because they endorsed you.
Can you draw a cake again and separate a cake?
That was a little more complicated.
Then I get hungry again. I remember that. And also, I remember that getting a green card, you have to get a lot of people to validate you and sign and for you and say that you're not going to take anybody's job away. And I remember Grace Slick from Starship. She wrote a lovely letter for me.
Yeah.
Even though she doesn't like We Built the City now, she did then, and she wrote a beautiful letter.
Yeah. We had to take your picture with a lot of people. Like, I think we were at an ASCAP thing, and Al Gore spoke there, so we got your picture with Al Gore.
And the mayor of Los Angeles.
And the mayor.
And Robbie Robertson. That time we got him in the village, we said we need a picture together. Yes, you had to get lots of photographs to prove that you were a valid green card kind of person, right?
That you were somebody who was valuable in the U.S. and you weren't taking anything away from somebody.
Again, it was Diane's great help. She helped my father as well with that. But I've got to tell a quick story here that people might find quite humorous, is that you get nervous when you're going to go to have your interview for your green card. And Diane said, you go take your earring out, wear a tie, look a decent man, comb your hair. And I went into this big building and you wait for your turn. And I had a huge folder of all people's validations for me and letters and photographs. Do you remember that, Diane?
Yeah.
That building was quite scary to me. And they sent me downstairs. You wait there for about an hour. And then I came in front of a lovely lady, a black lady sat there, and she looked at my files, and I was being a really good schoolboy, and she said, "There's a lot in those files. I'm suspicious." I said, "Well, no, it's all real." But she said, "Anybody with that amount of information, I'm suspicious." And anyway, she was starting to go through my files, and then she went, "Oh, you worked on Ghostbusters, remember?"
Yes.
She started to sing it to me, and I went like, yes, I did. She said, "Oh, that's great." And she just stamped it straight away. Bang, you're through. So it was like, she didn't even want to read all the stuff. But at the moment she saw Ghostbusters, "Who are you going to call?" She said, "You're in."
Yeah. Thank you, Ray.
You're now a citizen. It's okay. So you're very lucky if they know some of the songs that you do. But they're getting the green card and Diane's help. I couldn't have stayed here that long to do all that work. So
it was a great day when you got the green card.
Oh, wasn't it? And I put my earring back in, and became a scruff again. Became a scruff. That leads me on to again, just thinking about. I don't know why, but it was like the film songs. You know, when we're just talking about Say Anything. I think around that time or the year after that, John Waite called me. He heard a demo. And it was he'd been in the Babies, and he'd heard a song I'd written with Bernie called "Deal for Life" for the movie Days of Thunder, right?
That's right, yeah.
And this is all these film songs were coming.
Tom Cruise.
That's right. All these songs were being coming up for movies, and also at that time, Diane was putting me forward to produce more acts. And
that's right.
And those acts were coming for mostly men. I mean, I was associate producer with Maurice and on his solo record, and
the Bone Symphony thing. Which
Bone Symphony
already happened
again, men. And then I always thought about this. Went on with Paul Young,
yes,
and associate producer with Robbie Robertson.
That's right.
And then Kim Carnes asked me to try something on a track called No Man's Land. I thought my first female production, but that didn't go through. She said she couldn't sing it, like These Dreams, too high. And I think when John Waite asked me to do it, I remember refusing in a way. I said, no, I'm really a songwriter. Because, no, I really want to do this. You've done a great demo of it. And so we went in to do Deal for Life, a record with John Waite, with me producing it, and we did a great demo of it. And it was Mark Lennon, a lead singer, that I asked Diane to find me certain singers to sing on my demos, didn't we?
Yeah.
I think you found Tommy. I think you found through a publisher Marky Lennon from Venice, beautiful, great singer, and he sounded amazing on the demo.
Yes.
I thought, why don't we play the demo for Deal for Life?
Let's do that.
Here we go. Deal for Life. I love that demo. I think it turned out great, don't you, Diane?
Me too. I love it.
The vocal, beautiful. I think that's what it attracted John Waite to do the track. So I went into the studio to record the track with John Waite, worked out all the keys, got all the musicians, and they said, didn't they, Diane, that you can't have John Waite there with you singing consistently?
He was on tour at the time,
That's
and
right.
so we had to find dates or times when they could get him into the studio.
Yeah, it was
off
bad
the
English.
road.
Bad English he was with.
Yeah. So I think the time when you got his vocals was
He was in San Diego.
and it was like close to midnight. We had to wait for him to finish
That's right.
the concert, and then they drove him in, I guess, to
From
LA.
San Diego, yeah, and I got to tell you, I mean, you all know this, but if you're waiting there all into the early hours now. John has been singing with bad English, screaming his head off, and he's being driven to you from San Diego into LA
In the middle of the night.
To sing vocals, and I didn't agree with that from the beginning, but I thought, okay, and I spoke to John about it. He said, no, I'll be fine. But the poor man was exhausted when he came to sing some
Yeah,
of
a
these
little
vocals.
burnt out.
Yeah, and really, we couldn't get the best we wanted to get out of John because I think, Diane, you did talk. It was, again, we're talking about Trudy Green. It was the same manager we had to deal with, and I think you said this isn't going to work very well, right?
I did tell her that this just isn't the most opportune thing. Isn't there a better? Can't we get more time with them on a day off or something?
She said no.
It just was too tight.
Yep, and she said no, he can do it. And anyway, I had to get put John through the ringer, and then I had to comp his vocal to get the best I could, and it was pretty good, but I knew that John wasn't absolutely happy because he was exhausted, and I told him, I said, we really should wait till you had a rest and do it all again, but he had a deadline. So the song was finished, and it was sent on to the record company, and then we got a call, didn't we?
I got a call from Michael Littman, Bernie's manager.
Bernie wrote the song with me. Yeah.
And he also managed
Ron Neverson,
who was a very, very successful, well-known producer at the time. And they were going to put Ron Neverson on to add to the production. And
this is a great story, I think. Yeah.
And Mike was saying, so it's going to be produced by Ron Neverson and Martin. And I said, well, okay, under two conditions. Martin's name is first because he really produced it. Ron was just adding, I think he ended up adding a guitar solo. And two, that it doesn't affect Martin's points.
And that's royalties as a producer.
Yeah. And so that this, turned into an argument, so to speak, where there was a back and forth, and I'm saying to Michael, you mean that Ron Neverson, famous producer, you want him to take credit for the production that Martin, songwriter, sometimes produces, did? And he said, yeah. It's just, no shame.
Yeah.
And I said, well, no. Martin's still coming up, and he needs credit where he deserves it. So we'll agree to it if Martin's name is first. No, he wouldn't have that. You can't have Martin's name before Ron Neverson's. So then apparently Ron Neverson got involved. Yeah,
it's Diane was sort of keeping the wolves at bay, but then it was supposed to be a big movie. It was going to be Tom Cruise, and everybody thought that Days of Thunder was going to explode. And even Bernie called me and said, we don't stop this track being done, Martin, because it's going to be huge. And I went like, well, it's just not fair. It's just not fair what's going on. John couldn't sing it the way we all want it to be because he was tired. And it was put forward to me that John Waite said, hey, Ron Neverson should get involved and finish this, So I felt a little bit under...
I don't know if that's true, though.
That came up, and I felt a little bit under pressure then, because I thought the singer wants to try something else. Yeah, I'd comped his vocal down as best as it could be. Anyway, I got a call from Ron Neverson. Now, we have to just say here, Ron Neverson, he did The Who, Quadrophenia, he did The Heart, many, many big records, and of course, These Dreams had gone number one, and Ron Neverson had done that record. And I remember picking up the phone and he said, I think my memory's gone on this. He goes, "Hi." And I went, "Hi." He goes, "I'm Ron Neverson." And I went, "Yeah." And he goes, "Do you know who I am?" And I said, Yes, I do. You've done some brilliant work with the Who, and I love this. And I wrote I know you wrote These Dreams, but I am Ron Neverson, and I'm not happy with John Waite's vocal on this. And I said, well, nor am I. I think it's pretty good, but he was tired. Well, again, I think he said, well, John wants me to get involved, and I was like, okay, fine. You know who I am? Yes, I do. I've got quadrophenia. He was a little bit brutal, and I just said, well, I don't think you're going to get a better vocal. You want to save that vocal if you can.
He wanted you to send him all the vocals.
Yes,
the uncomp vocals.
That's right. He wanted me to send all the vocals so he could look at them again, and I'd already comped them down from like 6 vocals or maybe 7 or 8 down into 1, and I said we never had enough tracks to just keep that stuff, and this is the best stuff, believe me. And it was quite funny, really, because I think he said for the 3rd time, but you do know who I am. Yes, I'm going to play Quadrophenia tonight. I love Pete Townsend. Anyway, it was a bit comical. And I just left it like that, and I was a bit saying, I've done all this work, I've done all the drums and everything. If it really changes around and you really add to it, okay, I understand if John wants it that way. But Diane, eventually, after I told her that conversation with the man who said, do you know who I am? Diane had to call Michael Lippman, and I think we weren't going to agree to everything they said.
We weren't agreeing to giving credit to Ron Neverson first, but we did agree to if Ron wanted to add
and I think
production.
he wanted extra points as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he was the whole thing. So we said no. I'm no to that because that's not fair, and that's what I said to Michael Lippman. I said, look, Mike, it's just not fair.
Yeah.
And I'm not asking.
No, we were just trying to be fair.
We're not insisting on anything that is beyond what is right. And not only that, we were gracious enough to say, yeah, go ahead. If he wants to take it and do more vocals and record John further.
I didn't steal the tapes this time.
Didn't steal the tapes.
I passed them over.
The thing is that now we were getting very close to the time when the movie people had to do the label copy and put everything in print and everything. Yes. And so they were waiting for us to tell them that it's okay to give this credit.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't. We wouldn't say okay. And that's why Bernie called Martin to say, don't hold it up, Martin. And then Mike Lippman was saying to me, and by the way, I believe it was us, probably Martin, who got this cut in the first place, who got this connection to the film in the first place, right? So then Michael Lippman had the nerve, which is, I guess, being a good manager, to say to me, well, if you don't do this, you're going to get in the way of, we may lose the cut.
Yeah, major cut.
Well,
that's the way it is.
We got the cut in the first place, so it's like... I'm not taking anything away from you.
The trauma of going through records.
And then he started to say things like, if you don't do this, you'll never work in this town again. And, of course, that was quite comical to me, that it's like a movie.
You'll never work in this town again.
That?
I know, it was like a cowboy movie.
And, of course, I had not that long ago been working for what was called the pasta triplets, referred to as the pasta triplets, where a lot of people sort of under their breath.
Ruffalo, Farnoli.
Under their breath, they thought they might be connected to the mafia. So, of course, I think I said something to him like, ha, 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 you forget. I used to work for the pasta triplets. Shaking in my boots.
Yeah, it was. We laugh about it now. We've got a great relationship with Michael Lippman.
We did. He offered me a job after this.
Yes, after this fight, he said, "I need you working on my side." That's right?
Yeah.
And he really did. And we met him a couple of times.
We were on good terms. This was just, it was all a business thing.
Yeah.
We were just trying to outmaneuver each other.
Well, it was again. I think it comes down to fairness.
Yes.
And then when I heard the record finished, the vocal was exactly the same. What I'd comped, obviously, Ron Neverson didn't get another vocal from John. There were some strings on it, which were great, and different guitar part. But basically, nothing was touched. I think he was in there for a day. And, of course, he was saying, I think John can sing this better instantly. I said, yes, I think he can. But what we heard on the record, it was no different. But these were the politics and the trauma of actually sometimes seeing a record through. And, of course, you remember the little battles because some of them are quite humorous. And you have to hold your ground. But I think what resonates from that is one person saying, do you know who I am? And the other person saying,
you'll never work in this town again.
And we never did. That's why we're doing this podcast. It's all we can do.
The thing is when you're the little guy, people will try and take advantage of that and walk all over you or take advantage.
In fact, after we'd held up for a few of these things, when the album's out and the record's out and you're mixing with everybody, including Ron Neverson and all the artists, it's all forgotten very
totally
quickly.
Forgotten.
And I think everybody's got a lot of respect then for that you held out for what you want to do.
Yes. I think a lot of the strength in holding our ground, most of the times we had battles like this, was because we felt that we were...
It's fair.
Yeah. All we wanted was a fair deal. And we weren't.
And even then, I was happy for Ron Neverson to get involved. I could have been.
Yeah.
I could have said no, that wasn't the deal we had. But I thought if that's what the artists want, and everybody's moving that way. And in fact, when I saw Ron Neverson at an ASCAP meeting after that, I shouted out, "Do you know who I am?" And he said, "No." So I didn't leave much of a reputation there, did I? Are you sure you don't know who I am? No, I have no idea. Anyway, on to good music. I think you could see that me and Diane laugh a lot.
All the time.
I think that's what's kept us together. I'd play her songs and she'd just laugh. But still happens. I thought we're nearly at the end. I can't believe it. It's nearly an hour again. I mean,
unbelievable.
And
this is what we're like all the time.
Yeah, it's true. Actually, when my mother was alive, and I'd be talking to Diane about music or in the car outside the house, we'd be there for like 5 hours. And
Martin does most of the talking, and I just pipe in.
She just drops off to sleep and goes, he's off again. But I think it's time. We're nearly the end of this show, and we have to do another one, I think, because there's some things I still haven't asked you. But I want to play a demo I just found, a rare demo, a song called Always that I wrote with with Brian Fairweather when I first came into LA, and Philip Bailey of Earth, Wind and Fire fame, I got to know through Maurice, and he said, I like that song. He's about to do a solo record, right?
Yes.
Phil Collins was going to produce it.
Yeah.
And we thought, he said, I like this song, I'll sing it for you. So I found this demo, I remastered it a little bit, because it was an analog demo we did at the Complex, a 24-track demo, and Philip sings beautifully on it. And I just feel like ending this show with this song, because it just feels to me, it resonates, it hit me when I heard it again, of the time that I came to meet you at the Complex where Earth, Wind and Fire worked. I got to know Maurice and the management there, and what a feeling it was with Earth, Wind and Fire. So before we play Always, what was it like, Diane? I always find this is something I'm so fascinated about. What was it like to be around Earth, Wind and Fire when they were at their prime and you were at the management company?
Well, I mean, first of all, it was magical, and all these guys were really nice guys, everybody in the band, and joked around a lot in jokes, and you just felt like you were just honored to be there in their presence. But they were just normal, fun guys, great musicians. Yeah, that was magical, and you knew about their success.
Yes. And
when they had a hit record, it was interesting because with all the artists, but of course Earth, Wind and Fire were quite prominent in that office. There were these sheets of paper that we had that we worked on every week. There were like forms, and it was our job to check out, sometimes ahead of time, what the activity was, like
progress.
Billboard, Cashbox, R&R for radio and records, all the trades that had charts. And we'd have to go in and find all the charts, whether it was the pop charts, the R&B charts, or whatever, and mark down what it was the previous week, what it was now, or what it was about to be. Like tomorrow it's going to be this, or whatever it was. And leave that on the desk of the manager. And
Wow.
So there was always that going on. And when there was a number one, of course there's that.
Let's Groove was number one.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
I mean, this is a
Celebrative.
black band breaking number one in the pop charts.
Yes, exactly. Now, what can I say? Like anything like that, everybody's elated. There's
Yeah.
an air of celebration in the office.
I think what's wonderful as well, because I was coming into the complex, and in Los Angeles, you drive down the freeway to get there, and the sun is going down, and you walk into the studio, and you can hear Earth, Wind & Fire warming up, and the atmosphere. They were just lovely men.
They were all really lovely men.
Good
and
guys,
Fun.
yeah.
Even the road manager, who was Verdine and Maurice's brother.
Yeah. And his sister worked there.
His sister, Jerry.
Yeah.
Jerry White, worked right down the hall from me.
She was coordinating the albums, right?
She coordinated everything, and then they had like a manager, a road manager, who was their brother.
Great teamwork. You felt it with all the men.
Really good guy.
And Verdine White, as brother of Maurice, he allowed me
just
and
a lot of fun.
Yeah,
he'd talk right. He's really, really tall,
taller than me.
And he would almost be standing on my feet, looking straight
down. He had
down.
this way of, even Brian and I joke about it, that he would come right up to you, stand on your feet, and look right into your eyes.
And he talks fast, very, very sharp and fast, and bouncy.
And he had
really friendly,
incredible sense of jewelry and sense.
Of style.
Yeah,
altogether,
perfume as well.
fashion.
The perfume used to make my eyes water. But they used to turn up Earth, Wind & Fire dressed really well.
Yeah.
And even though they were going to sweat and play, and the great thing about Earth, Wind & Fire, and we're going to play Philip Bailey's demo in a minute, was that they did everything live. So when Brian and I walked into the studio, all the gear we'd seen at Wembley, all the live gear, was set up in the large room, and we thought, oh my God. No, but yes, another story, but we were actually in there with them playing instruments. And so you had the feeling that this was we hadn't seen this in England. This was a band that was larger than life.
Larger than life,
and every performance was live.
It was such a dichotomy because they were larger than life, and you were very aware of that. But on the other hand, when you were in the room with them, when you were talking to them, they were just so normal and so down to earth. And
Larry Dunn, the keyboard player.
Larry was fantastic.
Such a sense of humor.
Philip, sweetheart.
Well, let's get. I hope you can feel the atmosphere of what Diane felt and I felt, and Diane was around it before I was, and I always marvelled at the atmosphere of brilliant music by brilliant musicians with great hearts. And so when Philip Bailey decided to sing this song with us, and what a sweet man he was, we were thrilled. And I've just remastered this demo, and this is the demo with Philip Bailey called Always.
Shine through every day when each day. You're my lover, you're my friend. I will never let it fade, for you are my life. Every part of me will always be with you.
That knocked me out, actually. I mean, not that it was anything, but just brought back incredible memories.
Yeah.
Philip has such a beautiful falsetto. And, you know, it brought back the memory that there was a gentleman called Bill Myers.
Oh, yeah.
And Diane...
Keyboard player.
Yeah, and an arranger. And Diane,
Yeah.
he'd been involved with Earth, Wind & Fire. Diane got me to meet him at his house. And I remember that he said, I like this song always, and I'll arrange it for you. So all the strings you hear there, that's Bill Myers.
That's right. Yeah.
Doing it on
He had it all written out, too.
Oh, yeah. He was professional, and a DX7 he played that all on, which is pretty phenomenal.
I remember when you came back from meeting him at his house.
Yeah.
He had a gold record on the wall.
Yeah.
And you were just like, oh, my God, he has a gold record on the wall.
That's so true. I remember
That's how long ago it
me
was.
and Brian just stood in front of it, you know, going like, oh, my God, look at that. And but he was a lovely man as well.
Yes,
I mean,
he was.
everybody, including John Lind, the man I wrote lots of
Yeah.
songs with, everybody around Earth, Wind & Fire, stemming from Maurice White. It came down in a pyramid, and I say pyramid in reality that it was a family that followed underneath him with great integrity
Yeah.
and great soul. This is a great way to finish this show. I can't believe it. We're at over an hour, and I got to say, Diane, I still haven't asked you half about what I wanted to ask you.
I know.
So we're going to have to
Well,
do...
40 years of
Yeah.
working together is a long time to cover.
Yeah, it's true. And as you trigger one thing, another thing triggers.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to be the first person I've ever asked to come back to do 3 shows. I mean, Brian Fairweather did 2. And I was going to do another one with Trevor from Q-Phil. But I think we have to get you back. So will you come back?
I would be delighted.
Okay, so thank you, Diane. And we've got some more to talk about. So goodbye, everybody. And goodbye from...
Diane.
And Paigey. Bye-bye.
In the owl's nest.